Hey, what's up, guys? Today I want to talk about fitness. So when we're looking at the ideas of what's going on in the world as a whole, uh, it presents the idea that one, the potential of something happening, for example, here, local to us, whether it be, on the grand scale here in the U.S. or even at home where you reside or miles down the road, what have you. I want to hit on the idea that physical fitness is absolutely paramount. It's incredibly important. So we need we need to keep these things in consideration. So like a grown man has these innate responsibilities within us, especially if we have a family. So, like myself, I as a grown man am to protect and provide for my family. You know, like I am in the attempt of providing for my family uh, through training uh, with refuge medical and training, or on a monetary that's on a monetary means, and of course with the travel agency work that I do, or the Patreon. Those are things that I do in an attempt to provide on a monetary basis for my family so that I can make sure that we have food and shelter and water, and their wants and needs and desires are taken care of. I don't have to worry about that because I work, right? But a step further is not just the provision, but protection. So I have to protect uh, uh, their lives. I have to protect my animals. I have to protect my wife and my children in a whole, which requires me to have a certain level of physical capacity for violence in some cases. But if there are things that are being acted upon me, if my body cannot physically withstand the exertion to be able to survive and execute uh, uh, the level of execution that is required in order to protect my family, that can be a problem, right? So, uh, all things considered, there's some physical tests that I would challenge you to do. Uh, uh, first thing would be uh, a 1 rep max on squat. Do a weighted squat. Uh, and that needs to be at 1.2 times your body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be able to do a 240 pound squat, right? So 240 pounds if you weigh 200. So do the calculations, 1.2 times your body weight. Let's see. The next would be 1 rep max on bench press. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be able to bench press 200 pounds. 1 rep max on deadlift. So the conventional consensus here is 1.5 times your body weight. So if you weigh uh, 200 pounds, you need to be able to deadlift 300 pounds, right? And these are just benchmarks. This is the bare minimum that you need to be able to achieve. Uh, and then, of course, pull-ups. Um, at bare minimum, you need to be able to execute 5 pull-ups. Can you do that? Can you sit here and tell me here and now I can rep out 5 pull-ups? And then let's get into endurance, right? So it's because regardless of how many pull-ups you can do or how much you can bench press or how much you can squat, Yeah, strength is a factor, but so is endurance. Are you cardiovascularly fit enough to be able to move your family or move off the X? And you've got to move off the X here and now. And the only way we're going to be in safety is if we move a mile away. That's important. So, can you run a mile without stopping? That's important. Can you run a mile? And then, so the benchmark here, excuse me, for running a mile would be, do you have uh, the speed and capacity to run a mile under a certain time? See our benchmark here, that's a 9-minute mile. Some would say, oh, well, that's slower. And here's the thing, like with running, it's easy for people who are runners to say, oh, well, that's easy. But most runners are relatively weak. This is not the case across the board, but most, like, just that's all they do is run. They're relatively weak. They can't uh, squat 1.2 times their body weight. They can't bench press their body weight. They can't deadlift uh, 1.5 times their body weight. So, or much less do 5 pull-ups, right? So these are factors. We want to pair strength with endurance because we sit here and talk about, oh, well, I'm a prepper and I do this and all, and I'm all into that, and I've got all these guns and I've got all this food and I've got that bunker out there or whatever nonsense, right? Yeah, but you're a fat ass and you can't get off the couch for more than 2 minutes without actually huffing and puffing. Uh, or or you work all the time and you eat cheeseburgers and you're not cardiovascularly fit. You may look good in the mirror, quote unquote, but you actually lack strength and you lack the endurance and you just haven't trained and you don't really know what you're doing in that front to begin with. Um, I would recommend that you just get out, get in the gym, um, and just focus on these specific exercises and build up to the benchmark of in a squat where you can do at least one squat of 1.2 times your body weight. Now, why the squat? We squat every day. Squat is a part of, like I'm sitting in a chair, a part of getting up and down out of a chair is a squat. If I'm going to bend down and get something low, pick something up for my wife and put it up high, that's going to require me to squat with good form. And a lot of individuals deal with back pain, right? Well, what happens with back pain, predominantly lower back pain, is derived from a weak core and weak glutes. Because what happens is the pelvis rotates forward. I'll actually show you. So, because the core is weak and the glutes are weak, let's see. The pelvis tends to rotate forward where it's in a forward position. But if I flex my abs and then squeeze my glutes a little bit, my pelvis rotates and it puts me in a neutral fashion. That's what you want. And what's happening here is because you're in a forward rotated position, it's called anterior pelvic tilt. That anterior pelvic tilt puts strain on the lower back because the lower back is in a contracted position, taking the brunt of all the work, doing all the work that the glutes and the core and the hip flexors are supposed to be doing. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I've got tight hip flexors. You don't have tight hip flexors. Well, technically you do. The issue is that you have anterior pelvic tilt, which thus, I'll show you, lengthens, it stretches because of an anterior pelvic tilt. That hip flexor is stretched, it's elongated, which uh, causes you to feel tight, right? So because of that anterior pelvic tilt, your back, your lower back muscles are compressed, your hip flexors are stretched, and the only way to really fix that is to strengthen your core and strengthen your glutes. So why squat? Because it's important. It really helps with strengthening the core, and it isolates to the glutes very well, especially if you have good form, and it supports your legs. Your legs are incredibly important. All of that is a chain, and if you can execute those, if you can execute a squat, you're going to be building the core, the glutes, the legs, and all of that together, and actually help correct that anterior pelvic tilt where you're no longer forward rotated, but you're more at a neutral position, thus alleviating all of the back pain, right? And then why bench? You got to be able to push. Got to be able to push. You got to be able to move. You got to be able to lift. You got to do all of these things, right? And if you ever come out and do training with us, with Refuge Training, you'll find out that even just in a traumatic situation, a traumatic event, it can be incredibly physical, not just not just like uh, what is it like, not just in the sense of like your endurance, your cardiovascular, because we'll get there, because in a traumatic situation you're going to need strength in multiple different facets of your body, and you're going to need the endurance. You've got two different engines, right? You've got strength and you've got endurance. But if you've got strength and no endurance, you can go strong and hard, but you won't go for very long, right? And that's where the endurance comes into play. So we've got to build both of these up. So depending on the situation that you're in, that's going to require you to be able to push things out of the way, or push something and hold something up so that somebody can be rescued and get out and be free, right? What have you. And that's just, one situation, one scenario. And then you think about, okay, so a 1 rep deadlift, 1.5 times your body weight. If I'm 200 pounds, I'm actually 190. I just use 200 as a round number to make math easy. But if I'm 200 pounds and I can't deadlift 300 pounds, that's a problem, because there's a lot of things out there that weigh 300 pounds. What if somebody's pinned underneath something that's heavy, and they need to get out, or you need to pick something up so that somebody else can actually get the person free from the automobile who's impinged, or you name the circumstantial situation. And this is just, everyday stuff. Or if I need to pick something up for my wife, lift up the front end of my riding lawnmower so that she can uh, put the belt back on, or whatever, like there's all kinds of situations that I've ran into just in everyday life that requires me to utilize strength in these fronts. So these benchmarks here are going to be an overall benefit to you just in everyday life, right? And then pull-ups, 5 pull-ups, man. Uh, the average man should be able to pull himself up and out of danger. I would submit to you that there's gonna come a day where you're going to need to utilize uh, the strength that is gained from these exercises, and just push. Well, push-ups are important, especially on the endurance front, but on the strength front, uh, squat, bench press, deadlift, pull-ups. Uh, if you can just focus on those 4 things, those are going to be an overall overarching full body exercise that's going to get you from head to toe, and you'll be pretty well good to go for the most part, because they target a lot of muscle groups all at once. So you're going to be doing good. You're going to get a lot of benefit just out of those 4 exercises. And then endurance. Uh, why a mile, right? So a mile is important, one, because it is far out of the capability for any one person to sprint a mile, uh, which means you need to have that explosive power and you need to be able to move short distances quick. But also, if you need to get up and go, and we're going to move, we're going to GTFO out of Dodge, right? If we've got to move, and the only way that I know is a safe location, that's a mile away. I've got to get far and away from this situation right here, right now, quick, and it's got to be on foot. Can you do it? Right? So uh, that's where endurance comes into play. So why a mile? Uh, let's see. One, it's too long for an all-out sprint, yet too short to simply hang out in the easiest aerobic zones. So there's an actual stress test on your cardiovascular system. So um, runners will typically say, yeah, like I mentioned before, oh, well, 9-minute miles easy. Yeah, for most people, a 9-minute mile is not easy. Um, if you're an if you're an avid runner, yeah, sure, it's nothing to get a 6-minute mile. Sure, that's good. Good for you. How's your strength? Right? It goes back, it vacillates one or the other. The whole point is you need to have both. You need to have strength and endurance because it doesn't matter how hard you can go if you can't, if you can push hard, but you can't stand the test of time, you don't have the endurance to actually complete the task at hand. That's the problem. Okay. So to apply this to like a fight for your life scenario, right? You need both energy, you need both energy systems in strength and cardiovascular activity or in your cardiovascular health to be able to win that fight. Um, think about soldiers, they move quickly between points of cover. They move from this point of cover to that point of cover. Or maybe I don't have cover, but I've got concealment over here, so I've got to get to that location quick, short bursts of energy. That can be draining. Uh, but, I mean, you could even say the same for police that, they're capable of chasing and grappling a perpetrator or a suspect. Like, all of these things are incredibly important. You may have to get to cover quickly. You may have to cover ground quickly just to protect your family. So I want you guys to be thinking about that. And trust me, you really don't want to be the guy that gasses out before you arrive, and you meet your point of failure before you actually get to the point of success, where you've successfully protected and provided for your family, especially in a fight for your life scenario, which I would submit you can't ever you've got to get out of your paradigm the idea that, oh, that will never happen to me. You got to remove that from your normalcy bias, because the fact remains it can. Oh, I'll never get into a car accident, and then you do, right? Or that I'll never experience a church shooting, and then it happens, right? So, like, remove the idea of uh, that will never happen to me. Remove that from your normalcy bias. Break out of your myopic paradigm and realize that these things can and do happen. And they are happening somewhere in the world. But if it happens here right now, would you be ready? Uh, and then the last thing that I want to touch on is the idea of rucking. Uh, and that's the last portion uh, of this benchmark here. So a solid benchmark for rucking is you've got in your backpack. As a matter of fact, I'll show you. Boom, boom, right there. That weighs probably somewhere in the realm of about 50 pounds. I've got some things to take out and some things to put back into it. But typically my ruck fluctuates between 50 to 55 pounds. And then if I've got a full loadout, chest rig, remember that video? And then I've got a rifle with me, all together. That's throwing on another 15 pounds in the chest rig plus my rifle. So I'm looking at another 7 pounds there. Holy cow. Weight can really stack up and add up against you, which is where the idea of like ounces equal pounds, pounds equal pain. But can you just throw on a ruck on your back? Say you don't have the chest rig and the rifle, but can you throw a ruck on your back? And the benchmark standard is about 20% of your body weight. So if you're looking at 20% and you're 200 pounds, okay, so you're looking at 40 pound ruck, right? Mine is technically heavier. The solid average for a ruck in general for what most people need is going to fall in the realm of about 50 to 55 pounds. So just kind of accept that. You're really looking more at like 25%, but can you throw 40% of your body weight on your back? Because that's technically what your ruck needs to weigh. And then get out there and ruck 6 miles. Can you move 6 miles? And then can you move 6 miles in, you know, an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half? Because by the way, that's moving. That's moving. Uh, or can you just throw a ruck on your back and go out and ruck 2 miles and don't even think about time? Are you rucking? Because at which point that's again, it requires strength and it requires endurance. So guys, I just really want to emphasize this. If you're a man or you're a woman out there and you're looking at the big picture of what's happening in the world and you're thinking, I'm not ready, here's your wake up call. It's time to get ready. Uh, if you like this type of content, um, like, share, subscribe. I appreciate it. I've got questions out on my Patreon as well that I'm looking to cover. If you're interested, if you like Bible content, if you like this type of content, please check out my Patreon. Um, and I appreciate it. Guys, hope you have a great day.